And he at one time, like so many others, trusted his teacher and a mentor, Bill Jacobs, and he was one of many that were sexually abused and violated repeatedly in the 1970s. And so he will speak and tell you why he's here and why he's taken this action. And the brave action that he has taken is that he filed suit against Breck. He filed suit against Jacobs. And he used his name and has chosen to go public, not because he has to, but because he wants to make it known that children have to be better protected than the way Breck failed to protect children. And he carried this secret in silence and in shame for decades. And once he had broken that silence, he said to me, Jeff, I want to do what I can to help protect other kids. And so I am grateful and I am honored to stand with Rick Covin to do what we can to, number one, protect other kids, and number two, expose how Breck failed so miserably to protect the kids and chose instead to protect themselves and chose instead to protect their reputation, and how they have continued to fail to do that, and to this day, and even in this lawsuit. So before I address that, I'd like you to hear from Rick and why he's here, and applaud him for being the stand-up guy that he is and having the courage to speak truth to power. Rick?
Hi, thanks for coming down.
Come on over here.
Move over this way?
Yeah.
Okay, better. I went to Breck School basically during a time in my life when my parents were being divorced. My father had moved out. My family was fairly shattered. And I went to Breck with a love for science, a love for anything scientific. I wanted to grow up and be a veterinarian. And at Breck, I met a person who kind of took me under his wing, Bill Jacobs. He was a chemistry teacher and my teacher, and he was kind of stepped in for everything I was missing at home. Not only from my father not being around, the broken family, but took the love that I had for discovery and fanned those flames. Had me coming in after school doing special experiments, one which actually blew up in his office and started on fire over the weekend. Taking me to his home where we would take zinc in a flask and put acid on it and make hydrogen and fill up balloons, and then put a special fuse we made out of string and potassium dichlorate and float them down the street where they'd explode. You know, just things that kids love to do. And once he had me all kind of trusting in him and part of him, started to come into the bedroom where I was staying in his room and molesting me. And this went on for multiple times, even went on one time when we went on a school camping trip where we made an ice cave and we slept in the ice cave together. He molested me in there. Even then as a kid, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want to lose his companionship, his whatever it was. And after I left Breck, when I left Breck, of course, the abuse ended. But there was I don't even know how to describe it. There was a festering fire of pain that I just kind of buried down deep, and it never came up. It didn't come up talking to my parents. It didn't come up talking to my wife. Didn't come up talking to any type of therapist that I went to when my first wife and I were going through a divorce. It was never spoken of, except to my horse, because he wouldn't tell anybody else. But when I learned of Jacob's arrest on the internet, I called the reporter's phone number at the bottom of the byline, and the reporter started talking to me, and that's the first time that I had ever mentioned to anybody any of this. And the reporter said to me, he says, "Do you mind if I use your name?" And I thought for a second, and it was just like all of a sudden a pressure was relieved, like a pain. It was like an epiphany. And I just said, "Yeah, sure, use my name. This needs to come out. This needs to stop. Other children cannot go through what I'm going through. We have to stop these type of people and stop Jacobs from abusing other children." And when the reporter got done talking to me, I was just going to hang up. He says, "Well, you need to call the police." And I thought, well, why do I need to call the police? I just told you. I feel better. But through that reporter helping me to speak for the first time in my life of this, telling me to do the right thing, when I found out and I started to learn more and more about what Jacobs had done and learned how it was covered up and how the powers that be knew that he had a history of abusing children. I mean, my parents would have never allowed me to be with this guy. I remember Jacobs coming over to my house to pick me up, to take me to his house or take me to a special event. If my parents had known that he was a history of abusing children and that the headmaster knew back then, would she have let me go with this guy? Would she even sent me to this school? Of course not. And I know how much his sick sexual advances to me damaged me for decades. And to a school to allow that to happen, people in power to not take this guy out over decades of him doing this is something that has to stop. And that's why I have chosen not only to come forward and discuss it for the first time in my life, but to use my name to say, hey kids, hey people my age, this is not something you have to hide in the closet about. It's not your fault. I'm not ashamed of it. Will I maybe get some type of negative feedback? Could I maybe lose a job? Somebody wouldn't hire me because I was, abused. Maybe I couldn't get health insurance. I don't know. Those are probably real risks. But I've chosen to take this step to come forward with my name, with my story, so that, this doesn't happen to another 14-year-old next week at a school in this state or in this country. And I know it happens every freaking day. And it saddens me. And they would sadden any parent. And if my parents would have known that this guy was at the school, they would have never sent me there. No parent would.
The courage you've demonstrated in breaking the silence, the courage you demonstrated in giving testimony at the criminal case that put Jacobs behind bars for 18 years. But for that courage, he may not be there, and the courage of all the other families and the other kids that did come forward, and the courage of the kids that have yet to come forward, because each of them and their families need to know they can be protected. Their names can be protected, and it is Rick Covin that's chose to use his name so that his voice can be heard, and something more can be done. We're drawing particular attention to this because once Rick filed the case and we served it upon Breck School, they filed a motion to throw his case out of court, just as they had in an earlier case. And they claim in the papers, a copy of which you have, and I'll show you a portion of it, that they, Breck, owed no duty of care to Rick and the other students. No duty to report to the police, no duty to warn parents, no duty to do anything about what they knew. And the position that they take today is reflective of the same position that they took in 1973, 74, and 75, that allowed Jacobs to abuse kids then and ever since. And that is to deny that they have responsibility, and to remain silent, and to run from the truth, and be cowardly in how they have addressed this issue. And I am sad to call Breck out on this. They excel in educating students, and they get A marks in many areas of education. When it comes to child protection, Breck School gets an F. They have failed the kids, and they've failed to protect them. And let me tell you why. We know this to be now. And we didn't know it to be before. Last week, I took a statement under oath from Bill Jacobs at the Faribault prison, where he's serving 18 years for child sexual abuse. In that statement that he gave under oath, a copy of which you have, he admits that he could not control his sexual impulses. He also admitted that he began to abuse kids very early in his adult life, and he used his position as a teacher first at Taft to abuse, and he was caught there. And they allowed him to continue and leave quietly. He told me under oath that he went to Blake and taught at Blake and was hired there. And he told me that he could not control his sexual impulses, and he groomed kids the same way he groomed Rick there, and he got caught. And the headmaster and the assistant headmaster at Blake confronted him, and he did not deny it. And they allowed him to continue the year at Blake. And then he left Blake, and he told me how he went to work at Breck, where he was a star teacher in chemistry, and among the kids, Rick, one of them, of course. And he told me how he could not control his sexual impulses, and how he would have kids go on camping trips, overnights, and in the classroom, and how he would act out on those sexual impulses. Rick, one of them, and he admitted to having abused Rick. What's most disturbing about what I'm telling you about Breck is that in 1973, a report was made to a father, and that father immediately went to Jacobs and confronted him over his son's abuse. Jacobs admitted having abused that child to that father, and that father insisted that Jacobs go to the headmaster, who was then John Littleford, and report it to him. And Jacobs did that. Jacobs went to Littleford, and he reported it to him. And he told me about that in that statement. Sandy, put up number 1. In the statement that he gave me at page 38, I'm going to give you a brief outline of what was revealed under oath by Jacobs. At page 38, he talks about how he was required to report to Littleford, and he did report to Littleford that he had abused a child, and he went to Littleford's office to do that. He did not deny that he had, and Littleford did what? He basically told Jacobs to see a therapist, and he let him do what? Continue as a teacher and as a mentor to the kids at Breck, and permitted him to continue to access kids, and Rick Covin among them. At number 2, and at page 39, it reflects that alarming fact. Instead of reporting it to the police, instead of reporting it to the parents, instead of removing him or firing him or suspending him, what did Littleford choose to do as the headmaster of one of the best schools in this state? He chose to keep it a secret. Why? To protect who? The reputation of the school that he presided over. So, Jacobs continued his predatory ways, continued to recruit and groom and abuse kids on trips, in the school, and at Camp Warren, and abuse Rick. Less than 2 years later, another report is made. To whom? Headmaster Littleford. That a kid had reported to a parent, and the parent went to whom? Littleford. Littleford got the report that he had abused, and again, Jacobs, in his own words, admits having abused another kid, and having broken the promise that he had made to Littleford that he wouldn't abuse any more kids. What did Littleford do? Let him continue out the year. He kept it quiet. He did not report it to the police. I believe he reported it to the board. But what did they do if he did? Kept it quiet. So the parents, the unwary, the students, and the school, and all those who trusted him remain unsuspecting. Number 5, at page 50, how he promised not to reoffend. At that time, number 6 shows that his termination was considered, and they did not announce a termination, but rather quietly let him finish out his term there with pay. Jacobs, in his own words, went on to get a job as park police officer and ultimately become a park police chief, continued to offend kids, continued to get a law license, continued to use his credentials as a teacher in good standing at Breck, at Blake, and at Taft, and by his own admission has been accused of abusing somewhere between 17 and 22 kids. We believe there are more, but that's the number that at least have come forward so far. All of those kids, some adults now, some minors now, will remain anonymous at all times. What's important and most disturbing here is that an earlier case had been brought by another survivor whom we represented against Breck in 2010. And Breck took the position at that time that there was no prior knowledge and thus no fraud. And they also took the position in front of the court that the case was too late, so it was thrown out. But we didn't know then what we know now from Jacob's own words under oath. We know that they lied not only to us then and to the parents for 30 years and to the police for more, but they continue to deny and lie. And the reason we know that and believe that and share that with you quite painfully is that in this case, once we filed it, they brought another motion to dismiss it. And And before I address that, the statement made by Littleford in response to the last case was that I want to go on record as saying that I did not tell the family to go home and forget about it. He says at that time, his response to that family that reported it to him before Rick was abused, or while he was being abused, that he was forced to conceal it. He was forced to conceal it because he was afraid that if he didn't, he'd be sued. It's pretty shameful. Who was he thinking about? We know he wasn't thinking about the kids. So when Rick had the courage to file this case, and I applaud him for it, they filed another motion. And in that motion, they have claimed, and we put that up here, and I highlighted it, they have no legal duty. They had no legal obligation, moral or legal, to report either the reports that had been made to them, the admissions that Jacobs had made to them, and that they still don't have any legal duty to take any action to protect other kids. We believe the position taken by this prominent school, both then and now, is both immoral and outrageous. We believe that it needs to be known, and we believe that they're teachers, but they're teachers that need to be taught a lesson. And today the teacher is the courage of this survivor, who is saying to Breck and all those like him that choose to conceal and protect predators like Jacobs, to protect their reputation, you need something to learn something about child protection. You have a duty, you have an obligation to protect the kids. These kids were placed in their charge. These parents trusted their kids with this school. This school held themselves out as the best and safest place to be, and Bill Jacobs among them. They violated that trust in 1973, 1974, 1975, and continued to deny and lie about their role and responsibility to this day. So we share this with you with great sorrow and pain. And we share it with you in the belief that by Rick's courage in coming forward, and the other survivors that have and will, we can do something to make them the school they have promised they would be or have always been. And that is a safe place for kids. And until they learn that lesson, and until they hear these words spoken from his heart, born of his pain and sorrow, and all the other survivors, 22 by my count so far, they will continue as they have been. So we speak with great sorrow, but also with great hope for a better and safer tomorrow from this school and those administrators, in and out of court, in and out of school. And we are grateful to Rick Covin and all the other kids and adults who have come forward, and the families and the parents who have suffered, who never should have. If Littleford and the top administrators at Breck and those that precede them had the courage to simply speak the truth and do what any responsible adult would do. Once Jacobs admits it, what do? You report it to the police, and you put him behind bars. He's behind bars now for 18 years. If they had done what they should have done in 1973 and before, he would have been behind bars then. And 22 or more kids' lives would not have been shattered, and Rick Covin would not be sharing his sorrow and having kept this secret with you today. So to him and all the others that have spoken and yet to be, we are grateful for your courage and your resolve to make them better. And I'm grateful to be a part of that. Any questions?
Just to make sure I have things accurate, this suit was filed on the 30th of April, right?
Yes, the day that Jacobs was sentenced, we served him with a lawsuit.
And did he eventually settle before he gave this deposition?
We have made no settlement with Jacobs. We made an agreement with him that he has now been held responsible. He's in prison for 18 years. He can't hurt any more kids. And if he tells the truth, and he gives us the truth about his history, any further suits that I bring and we bring on against for the harm that he's done, he's not going to be held financially responsible for that. And in exchange for that, I said, give me the truth, give it to me under oath, tell me what you knew and what they knew about what you did, and tell me the truth about what you did, and you'll be held harmless in these lawsuits. And that's what we did.
Have you had any settlement talks with Breck?
No, Breck has been belligerent. Breck has taken the position that offenders take: deny, minimize, and blame. In the first suit that we brought, they got it dismissed on the statute of limitations and on the basis they had no duty to that kid whose dad had reported it. And in this case, they, as soon as I sent the papers to them, they filed a motion to dismiss, and in it they filed their position that he is too late, the statute of limitations has run, and moreover, they've taken the belligerent and I think immoral position that they owed no duty to him, to his parents, or to those other kids to warn them about what they knew. Because Rick was abused after at least the first report, and probably being abused during that time and well after it. So Breck's position is disturbing, at best shallow, at worst, and disturbing, because this is the year 2012.